Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Maurizio Sarri's days at Chelsea appear to be numbered following the Blues' exit out of the FA Cup due to the hands of Manchester United. Where did Chelsea go wrong? What did Manchester United do right? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down how Manchester United defeated Chelsea. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's game, it basically was wrapped up in the first half due to the fact that United did sit back and Chelsea were unable to break them down the second, and nothing really changed. So in this video, we're going to break down the first half, see how Chelsea looked to approach the game, and what United did to stifle them and be able to expose them on the counterattack. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Chelsea 4-3-3. No real surprises here. Pedro, Eden Hazard, and Higuain up front. In midfield, Jorginho, Kovacic, and N'Golo Kante. Then we move to Manchester United. More of a 4-3-1-2, 4-4-2 diamond. You got Lukaku and you have Rashford just ahead of Juan Mata. In the shuttling roles, you have Pogba and Herrera just ahead of Matic. So now let's look at the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game and how United were able to win the game in the opening 45. So when we break down United against Chelsea, we have to look at the two shapes. We knew Chelsea were going to be a 4-3-3, but United moving to a midfield diamond was a bit of a surprise. Obviously, when you look at the diamond here, they have the numerical advantage in midfield. Mata at the base, you could have the shuttlers against the shuttlers, but Nemanja Matic is the key man here. Chelsea never really looked to close him down, and that was a big worry. There was one time where we did see Matic clip a ball into Rashford, spinning off into that channel to hold off Rudiger, and he was able to win a free kick. But besides that, Matic was there for more security reasons, and he is a good passer as it is. So when you look at it, they did have that advantage there. But Chelsea kind of went about their business the same way, especially in terms of how they were pressing. There was no real surprises. Higuain would step to a center back, and the spare center back would be handed to the shuttler, whether it be Kante stepping out or if it's Higuain moving to the other side and having Kovacic step out. That's how they did go about it. We did see Hazard and Pedro step to the fullbacks and Luke Shaw and Ashley Young to close them down in that regard. And then what you have is the midfielders trying to close off the spaces that they could get to. And we'll get to Chelsea's pressing in a bit. When they didn't have the ball, they dropped off into more of a 4-5-1. And even then, they're pretty organized. Like when we really break down United's chances, not many of them stem from United carving them open with quick combination moves or getting to either side of Jorginho and finding play in behind the Chelsea backline. So that wasn't how they were going about things. We did see Herrera fire a shot from distance that forced Kepa into a save. But besides that, Chelsea were pretty comfortable in their shape when they dropped off. But we have to look to United here because United's decision to go to a midfield diamond did spring a surprise, and it did see them operate in a different manner, because what happened now was that the intention here was to do what other teams have done to Chelsea, more so Spurs. And what we've seen is that you had Lukaku and Rashford stepping to the center backs. You had Juan Mata stepping to Jorginho. And this was interesting because Mata isn't renowned for his pressing or his work rate. You have to look back to his time at Chelsea with Jose Mourinho. So him to move there instead of Jesse Lingard, who was out, was an interesting ploy. And in the opening stages, it did look like it worked. And throughout the spell of the first half, there were times where he did switch off, and we'll get to that in a bit. But for the most part, he was really close to Jorginho without, and I think that was more than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer could have asked for. With that being said now, if those three are stepping in, then you got to have the wider players or in the shuttlers stepping out into the wide areas. That is one of the difficult tasks of a midfield diamond, is that obviously you match up well in midfield, but if the ball is shifted out to the fullbacks, you don't have a wide player able to step there. And because Chelsea play a 4-3-3, you don't want to push the fullback into that role if you don't have to. So what we often saw here was the ball was shifted out to Azpilicueta. Paul Pogba would be tasked to step into that zone there. That leaves Mata with Jorginho. That leaves Kovacic with Herrera. But that also sees Nemanja Matic step into the space to ensure that N'Golo Kante isn't a free man. And the same thing goes on the opposite side. You would have Matic step to Kovacic, and you would have Pogba stick with his man on that flank as well. So that was kind of how they were going about things, but that press didn't last long. And what happened after that was that United were dropped off a bit, and Jorginho was able to get on the ball a bit more. You had Marcos Alonso kind of step into his space, and he was able to push forward. And Kovacic, for the most part, if he was in a deeper role, was able to pick up the ball. But the thing about that is that it didn't really harm United because Kovacic wasn't offering a threat in the final third or playing Chelsea players in behind. The main threat here was obviously Eden Hazard. When Hazard dropped off deeper into midfield, you saw Ashley Young stick to him. If you move centrally, Matic could step out too, and that did lead to a booking when Hazard was able to skip by him. But when Hazard looked to stay wide and get the ball in 1v1 situations, we often saw Ander Herrera step to that flank, and that is where Chelsea did really struggle, because even if Alonso tried to push more narrow, what you would have there is that Matic could step in and ensure that he blocks off that outlet. And the same thing with Kovacic. Let's say you have Alonso there and Kovacic tries to step forward to kind of create a 3v2. Matic was aware of that danger and he stepped in to ensure that that threat wasn't key. So Hazard often struggled in that regard. He was often in 1v2s. We saw him dispossessed by Herrera. We saw him dispossessed by Smalling. So Chelsea really didn't have anything going through Hazard. We saw him drift centrally, but he was closed out there because United were so narrow and because they kept space between the lines to a minimal 5 to 10 yards. And he often drifted out to the right as well, but Hazard was struggling to have a significant influence on the game. Pedro didn't offer much down the right-hand side. But what you could also see was that because United's shape was so narrow, because Herrera was kind of tracked into that zone, they did have the outlet to push the ball out wide to the opposite flank for Azpilicueta, but we didn't really get much from him either on that side. So that's kind of how Chelsea were going about things. Higuain was marked tightly by Lindelof and Smalling, who had terrific games. And like I said, in that zone particularly, Hazard wasn't really offering much. So when we look to some of the chances that Chelsea did create, you have to think obviously about the free kick that Luis fired into Romero, who pushed it away, and Pedro volleyed the rebound back into him. When we look to the chances, all of them the three chances in particular within that opening 20 minutes kind of epitomize what Chelsea were trying to do throughout the game. We look to the first one where it is Hazard in the 1v2 situation, and what happens here is that we see Marcos Alonso move into the path of Chris Smalling, and Hazard realizes that he can't beat two of them, so he cuts outwards, plays it to Alonso, and you have Mata a bit deeper, and he runs across Mata to get the ball back with the wall pass, but he curls his effort wide. But that was one of the few times where Hazard was able to get the better of those two and the United backline, unless he went wide and tried to deliver a cross into the box that was cleared or caught by Romero. On another opportunity, we did see Jorginho. Like I said, Mata did do a good job of sitting on him, but he was able to find a ball in over the center backs for Higuain to get onto it, but Higuain was unable to really control the ball, and when he brought it down, Romero was out and he was forced wide, and he can only guide across through the box that no one attacked. That was another problem with Chelsea. Higuain was often getting into the box to challenge things, but there wasn't any midfield runs. Pedro and Hazard weren't getting into the box as well, so it was pretty easy for United in Lindelof and Smalling to deal with Higuain's threat. When we look to the final opportunity that really sums up what United were trying to do, Chelsea were trying to do, you have Conte switching the ball out to Azpilicueta with Pedro Nero, and what happens there is that you're supposed to get Pogba to switch out into that position, and this was the thing that kind of made Chelsea's attack weird. Pogba didn't really have the opportunity to push out into that position because Azpilicueta wasn't getting forward as often. But you could see that if they did switch the ball quickly, they would be able to get either Alonso or possibly Azpilicueta free in those zones. But they got him free there, and he was able to clip a superb cross into the box, and Higuain got between both center backs, but he not his effort inches wide. When Chelsea tried to move to the left, like I said, as the game wore on and Hazard was moving centrally, you did have Kovacic and Alonso down, holding the fort down on the left-hand side, but they weren't really offering much, and that kind of sums up where Chelsea were able to find their brief advantages, but United's shape without the ball was very good. They dropped off into that 4-5-1. They were pressing from the front, but as the first half wore on, we saw Mata drop off deeper to Jorginho. We saw Lukaku and we saw Rashford kind of drop off as well to offer some numbers there when required. But now let's look to United, kind of see where they were really trying to get their opportunities, how they were able to go ahead, and why they caused Chelsea so many problems. So when we look to United, we have to think about the ways that they possibly could harm this Chelsea side. You look at the center forwards and what they can offer there is that they could possibly break out into the channels, but that didn't really happen in the early stages of the game. As you can see, they pressed well and United dropped off for the most part of that opening stages of the first half. You think perhaps Juan Mata can offer an advantage by drifting laterally to get the ball to either side of Jorginho, possibly dispossessing him. That didn't really work out. Could Paul Pogba get the best out of N'Golo Kante? All these factors come into play, but what often happened was that Chelsea were just switched off, weren't marking midfield runners into the box, and for when you break down the chances, it just shows that United, for all they did defensively well, they had a game plan and they executed it perfectly. When you think about one of the opening chances they did have, it's Hazard dropping off and he's tracked by Ashley Young and dispossessed. Matic now is able to switch it over to Pogba, who's able to evade N'Golo Kante and another challenge. And what happens here is that it's almost a carbon copy of the build-up to the goal, where Pogba's able to clip the ball to the far post over Marcos Alonso. Rashford gets in behind them, controls the ball, but his first touch isn't really brought down the way he wanted it to, and he's forced to go back, and he ends up winning a free kick via Marcos Alonso fouling him. So that was one opportunity where we kind of saw what United were trying to do. They're just unable to offer that finishing product. What we end up seeing in the build-up to the goal is Chelsea, for the first time, kind of messing up the press, because like I said, they never really looked to press Matic because they were fine with him playing sideways passes, and at times when they did press him, they were able to pinch out Kovacic or Kante to him, and sometimes we even saw Higuain step forward. Here in the build-up, they did make a few mistakes. What happens now is that we see Higuain on Lindelof, we see Shaw pressed by Pedro, and then we have Kante step to the man that is Nemanja Matic, and he's able to clip the ball out to Lukaku, who drops off and drags out Azpilicueta. When he drags out Azpilicueta, Lukaku's able to split Azpilicueta, and he's able to split Pedro, and now Kante's out of the game, and he plays it into Matic. Matic now is able to play the ball to Mata, who is to the side of Kovacic, able to brush him off and play it back to Lukaku, who is now able to play the pass and split another set of defenders in, and he gets it back to Mata. When he gets it back to Mata, Mata's able to slide the ball to Paul Pogba, who is now ahead of Azpilicueta. So when he slides the ball to Paul Pogba, what happens there is that Rudiger's forced to shift over because Azpilicueta is taken out of the game. Pogba's now willing to run at him, and what we see Mata do very well is with Jorginho coming across, he's able to offer that overlapping run, and no one takes Mata, and what happens there is that he's able to then cut in. Now when you think about it, okay, he's cutting in. Pogba cuts in, but what happens there is that you see Rashford now, who was making the run behind Alonso, he steps in between Alonso and David Luiz. So they're ball watching, Jorginho and Rudiger. David Luiz is ball watching as Rashford gets across to him, and Marcos Alonso doesn't call it off. So he doesn't call it off. We see the run in between, but no one picks up the run of Herrera, who started it from half, and no one tracked him. And he's able to make that run in behind Alonso. Alonso notices it late. Pogba clips a superb pass into him, and Alonso is too late to recover, and Herrera nods a superb header past Kepa. That's a beautiful goal. Plenty of breakdowns, but again, no one marking the run. The Mata overlap, and Pogba's able to offer an influence from the final third. That is what Manchester United fans want. After that goal, we saw United drop off a bit deeper, and this is where they became more organized. Now they were able to play more of a narrow three. They had the defensive line step forward a bit. With Hazard moving centrally, that did benefit them because there was no real space between the lines. We often saw Mata now drop off ahead of Jorginho, and he was willing to press the center backs if be. At first he wasn't. He they allowed the center backs to push forward, and they were fine with that based off the fact that they were very organized, they were very compact, and like I said, central areas were occupied. They were a bit worried about the wider areas, so we saw Lukaku play a bit, dropped off a bit deeper, and we saw Rashford extremely deep. And what happened there was now you had Kovacic a bit higher, you had Alonso pushing forward, and this was the ploy. Because although you have the three there, what happens now is that with that three, you have space for Rashford to break into behind Alonso. Every time that United won the ball, we saw Rashford making that run into that channel. That was what they were trying to do. If we saw Mata step to the center backs, you'd have Lukaku kind of step to Jorginho. But Lukaku was there, the ball wasn't being shifted out to Azpilicueta, so there was no real worry, and Pogba was able to just ensure that he occupied that space because Shaw was watching Pedro, and Pogba ensured that he stayed in that space right there. There was no real issue for him, and when you look at the build-up to the second goal, a simple throw-in from Ashley Young, you end up having Rashford flick it on over Alonso, and David Luiz does well to nod it into the path of N'Golo Kante, but Pogba steps in to intercept, and once Pogba intercepts that ball, you have Rashford on the go, and he slides the ball into Rashford. Luiz is able to come across, you have Azpilicueta and Rudiger recovering, but once Pogba slid that pass, no one tracked the run of Paul Pogba, and that's a bigger issue. Pogba is able to run freely from half in between that space. Rashford is able to clip the cross into him. He's his underrated crosser. That cross goes into the box, and Pogba attacks it. Superb header. 2-0 Manchester United going into halftime. Chelsea never recovered in the second half. United were able to drop off into that shape on countless occasions and look to spring forward, and Chelsea made like-for-like changes. We saw Willian come on, not offer much of a threat. We saw Ross Barkley come on and Zappacosta, but United were able to drop off a bit deeper, deal with the threat that Chelsea tried to impose, whether it be Hazard dribbling, trying to get crosses into the box, and United did a good job there, and that was where they were able to finish off the game. And when you break it down, they won it in the first half, and Chelsea made simple mistakes that once again they were punished for. But let me know what you guys think. Is this the final straw for Maurizio Sarri? And what about Manchester United? Can they finish in the top 4 and possibly win a domestic trophy? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.